All right, guys, welcome into the latest episode of the Starting 11 podcast. My name is Emilio Pena. Now, I got a very special guest with me today. It's Evan Alvary back again. If you've been with us since the beginning, you definitely recognize Evan. If you've seen some of the other Blaze
Yeah,
content, the basketball content, you're definitely familiar with Evan. He's been away studying, grinding hard, finishing up the degree. So, fortunately, we were able to have him on for a nice little episode, real quick. Champions League. We're halfway through the group stage qualifications. 3 games have been played for every team, so probably a good time to kind of evaluate the tables and see how we're doing. And this is pretty convenient for Evan as he's a Bayern Munich fan. We're going to start with Group A. Bayern
yeah.
sitting pretty dominant in first place, winning all 3 games, collecting all 9 points. Um, I think. I mean, for me, I feel like it goes without saying that they're going to win the group, definitely going to qualify based off the fact that they've beaten every team already. Um, the real question is who's else is going to qualify, because when
Yeah.
the teams were announced, when the teams were announced, people probably assumed it was going to be Manchester United just based off of the pedigree, the reputation of the team, the history. But
I
um,
thought I thought it would be Manchester too because they had a good season last year. So I thought they would be, going on in the Premier League and in Europe too. So I thought it would be pretty easy to for them to end up second. I was kind of scared the first time Bayern faced up Manchester because I thought they would be a threat, and they ended up being. I mean, they score goals, but we are weak in defense. But they are not playing as I would expect it. So that's quite surprising.
yeah, and somehow they're only 1 point behind Galatasaray with 4 points, and United has three. Um, I think for me, I think Manchester United is ultimately going to qualify. They've kind of picked it up as of late. Harry Maguire seems to be playing really well again. Andre Onana has been playing well. They both had incredible performances against Copenhagen, and they're
Yeah.
starting to get a little bit healthier too. So for me, I think Manchester United is ultimately going to get that spot, despite Galatasaray playing pretty well.
There's going to be two very important games for United. The first one being when they'll receive Munich at home. Even though they score goals in Munich for the first game, it was still a no match, I think, because Bayern was way better and they could have scored 6 or 7 goals. So when they're going to receive Bayern in Manchester, that's going to be very important. They need to at least get 1 point. I'm being kind. They need to win if they want to keep a chance. Because Galatasaray they won't be able to beat Munich in Munich, so that would be an advantage above Galatasaray. And then the second game will be against Galatasaray because they'll be moving in Galatasaray, and we know how hard it is to play in Turkey in the atmosphere in Turkey. It's one of the hardest in Europe, and it's always hard. So these are gonna be the two important games. They should win against Copenhagen, no problem. I mean, on the paper, they're basically gonna win. But we never know. But normally they should win. So yeah, that game when they'll be receiving Munich and when they be going to Galatasaray, especially this one, because if nothing changes in the current situation, Galatasaray will still be the main direct opponent to Manchester for qualification in the 16th round of final. So that's going to be a hard game for Manchester. They got to be strong when they go in Turkey because that's going to be a hard one.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that because the first game was in Manchester when Galatasaray beat them. And like you said, that Munich game, the scoreline made it look a lot closer than it was. It was kind of a freaky header from
Yeah,
Casemiro, I remember, and then there was just a bunch of stuff going on at the end. But Bayern definitely was in the driver's seat the whole time for that
yeah,
game.
definitely.
So, um, do you think Galatasaray or do you think Manchester United goes through?
With the current momentum, I'd say Galatasaray. Because honestly, they look strong, and the fact that they will be receiving Manchester at home is going to be, they're going to be in the best situation to beat them and take that advantage. They need to keep the second place. So honestly, I'd say Galatasaray. They're in a strong position. They have the momentum with them, so why not?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think really if they just pick up one more win and then at least one draw, then they should be able to secure that spot.
Yeah,
I'm going to go with United though, just because I have a feeling. No real analytical reason, just besides the passing of Sir Bobby Charlton maybe might fuel them a little bit too. But yeah, Group B. When they first announced the groups, Group B kind of looked like Arsenal was going to run away with the group, given the other teams. But you one of your French teams, not that you
I'm
support
so
them, but
happy.
yeah,
No, but
Lens.
it's good to be represented by a club like this rather than PSG. It's not normal because PSG should be the first club representing us in Europe due to all the money they have on the players. But Lens being an historical club in France and they have kind of a pedigree in Europe, 40 or 50 years ago. It's great to be represented that way with them. It's been the atmosphere in Lens. It's when they received Arsenal, it was amazing. I was watching the game at home and even Arsenal fans were surprised and they were just, wow, this is great. So it was an amazing game, and the group is interesting. I'm a bit disappointed by Sevilla. I thought they would be a bit better. They like European competition, but yeah, apparently it's going to be Arsenal and Lens.
Yeah. And honestly, the way that Arsenal has picked up a few injuries, I think Thomas Partey and Gabriel Jesus have both been deemed injured for at least a few weeks. So it wouldn't be that shocking if Lens ended up stealing the group and winning
Yeah,
ultimately. But yeah,
but
like you said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, Arsenal is good because they, as you said, they have a few injuries. They're not so far this season. They haven't been as good as they were last season, and yet they're first of the group. They're holding up in England, so it's good to see a team like that is not at its full potential, still winning. Despite the struggles, there's like a solid team. That's good to see.
Yeah. And you brought up Sevilla. It looks like maybe they're just trying to drop down to the Europa League since they're a little bit more comfortable with that league, it seems
I
like.
had that joke with the friends. It's just a plan. They don't try to escape the group. They're just trying to go down in the Europa League and
Hmm.
then winning all.
Let's just get third place. That's where their
Yeah.
mind's at. Um, I mean they
Although
won
although
last
I
year.
yeah although Eindhoven is still they have the same amount of points as Sevilla, so that
It's
might
true.
be a danger.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about PSV. They kind of have gone under the radar with this group. Um, but moving on to Group C, I think this one kind of there's not really a whole lot to go with Group C. It's Real Madrid and sitting at first place with 9 points, and Napoli sitting at second with six,
Yeah,
followed by Braga and Union Berlin. Unfortunately, with Berlin, they were a really great story in the Bundesliga last year.
yeah.
I think they were in Bundesliga B 2 seasons ago.
Absolutely, and it's like it's a huge club in Germany in terms of history, but they kind of dropped down. At that period of football when all small clubs that used to be good they dropped down. It's like the popular club, besides the Hertha Berlin, and yeah, they came back in Bundesliga one, and they had a fantastic season last year. They were a title contender until the very last games, and I don't know. I'm not surprised they're ending up hard in the group because they have Napoli, they have Madrid, so these are teams they can't beat on the paper, and they lost some players comparing to last year. So it's just, I mean, I would have been happy to see them getting a few points. Maybe that will happen in the second phase. But yeah, it's not that much of a surprise. They're for the small club they are, and then they're just getting back on top of Germany. And this season is quite hard so far. It's not as good as last year. It's just Europe with a group with Madrid and Napoli is just too big of a step for them.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. It would be nice to see them pick up a few points and maybe advance to the Europa League because I think
At least, at
they
least.
they have I know they have Brendan Aronson from the
Yeah.
United States, and then they picked up a transfer from Milan. I want to say I'm blanking on the name, but I want to say like a big name free agent moved over to Berlin. So if they could just stay in some European competition, that would be pretty cool.
It's not over because Braga are 3 points and Berlin are zero. So with one win against Braga, they could be back. But the problem is that is Madrid and Napoli. I'm not
Yeah.
saying Braga could beat them too, but Braga still has more chance to maybe get 1 point from Napoli, which is the weakest team between Madrid and them, and Napoli. But yeah, the thing is that even if you beat Braga, you gotta I don't know. You got to manage to get 1 point in Madrid or in Napoli. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, but I think we're both in agreement that Madrid and Napoli are going to advance. I think
Oh
maybe
yeah,
Madrid wins the
yeah,
group.
obviously. Yeah,
And now Group D. Group D is probably one of the more interesting ones as far
it's
as
the
just
most surprising one.
you got Sociedad sitting at first with I think maybe a by tiebreaker, I'm not sure, goal differential, but
Yeah,
Sociedad is sitting at 7, Inter Milan 7, and then RB Salzburg 3 points, and Benfica, which has kind of been shocking that they have 0 points because they qualified all the way to the semi or quarterfinals last season, and that was
Benfica
one of
is a
the shock.
surprise. I'm not following the Portuguese Championship. I don't know what happened and who are the teams on top. But yeah, Benfica from the European level, they're always in the group phase. They always escaping the group phase. They don't even go to the Europa League, and they always a tricky team to play in the first elimination round. So it's quite a surprise to see them with 0 points, especially with the group where apparently the only threat is Inter Milan. Salzburg should be easy for Benfica, but yeah, they are last with no points, and Sociedad is quite a surprise. I'm not following enough the Spanish Championship, but I know they playing quite well this season, and seeing them racing up against Milan with a better goal differential, that's quite interesting. What will be interesting to see is if they manage to get out of the group, which should be all right, uh, how they're going to play in the elimination run. Can they be a threat for not the top teams of Europe, but a mid club like maybe Madrid, who's this season is not the best team in the Spanish Championship. If they face them later, because they can't face them right away after the group. But mid-Italian teams or mid-Germany teams or even French teams would be interesting to see what Sociedad can do.
100%. And I really like Oyarzabal and Kubo, I think the Japanese
Yep.
player, they've both been playing pretty well for them on the attacking end. So I think ultimately they probably going to still win this group, sit at first, and then Milan, like you said, just the two. It's just
Yeah,
hard to see
in
them fall
fact,
out.
Milan is just as the only non-surprise result in the club. They have as many points as the first, and they are second, and they're just sitting quietly in the second place and just waiting for the end of the group, getting the points. So
Yeah, and I mean they made it all the way to the final last year, so it's hard to see
yeah,
them not advance through, whether they win
yeah,
the group or get in second. But that's definitely a group we got to keep an eye out for. Group E, this one is probably one of the groups that is least what's the word I'm thinking of? Least
expected.
entertaining. Yeah,
Yeah,
expected too. Because Feyenoord sitting at first place, they won the Eredivisie last year, I think. Yeah, I think they won last
yeah.
year. And then Atletico Madrid sitting right behind them at 5 points. Feyenoord is 6, Lazio 4, and Celtic 1. Um, I think Lazio they escaped with a point in the first game. The
Yeah,
goalkeeper Heather just barely
yeah, it was
survived.
amazing against
Yeah, that
Madrid. It
was.
was amazing.
But
And yeah,
um,
Lazio is not a surprise. They have 4 points, which is good. Only one behind Madrid. It's incredible because so far, like in terms of points, every team can still win the group. Even Glasgow, they are 5 points away, which is a lot, but they have enough games to come back if they want and if they have the tools. And Lazio, they're just 2 points away from the lead and 1 point away from Madrid. So that's a tough group. Feyenoord is it surprising? I don't know because the three top Dutch teams, Feyenoord, Ajax, and PSV, they always have every season they have young players that are coming from the formation center, and they are always tricky to play because they have good coaches, good young players. They're always interesting to see them play and playing against them. So being first in front of Madrid with one more point, yes, this is surprising, but being in the race for the first place and the qualification, I'm not surprised that much.
yes, I mean you got to be a good team to win your league, no matter what the
Yeah,
league is. So definitely going to give them credit there. And Madrid being or Atletico Madrid being who they are, I imagine they're going to do enough to qualify for the group stage. They didn't last year. I think they were in that group of death with Milan, Inter
yeah,
Milan, and someone else in Barca. So they kind of got a lucky roll this year, so to speak. Group F, speaking of group of deaths, though, group F is the group of death this year. PSG sitting at first with 6th place, Dortmund 4 points, Milan 4 points, and I'm sorry, Newcastle 4 points.
Newcastle.
Yeah. And then Milan sitting at last with 2 points. Um, it's tight for the most part. I think PSG is ultimately going to win that group. The only bad result they had was going up to Newcastle, so they don't have to go up there anymore and deal with the cold weather, the rain, and everything. So I think they're in the driver's seat to win the group. I don't know how much of them you've watched this season, but I kind of just
I'm
like.
I'm not sure they're gonna win.
Really? Okay.
First of all, in France, they are struggling. Despite having wiping out all the star players they used to have, to kind of build from the ground around Mbappe and the new coach, they are struggling in France. There are many teams that are a threat to them, and they are not leading the league. And Dortmund is playing well this season, especially in Europe. Newcastle, even though they don't have to go in England anymore, they have to face Newcastle in Paris. And Milan is gonna be hard too. So even though they are the worst team in the group so far, nothing says that Milan will stay with that kind of form and that they will not come back. So I'm not sure PSG is gonna win the group. And even if they win, it won't. I mean, it's not gonna be a memorable group campaign for them. It's not. I was, when they make the draw for the group, they had like statistics like from the bookmakers and all of those people, and the prediction was that among the four team of the groups, PSG was the one was the least chances to win the group. They had like 26% chances to win the group behind all the other three teams, and I was kind of surprised. And then when I saw the first game in the French division and in Europe, I was not surprised anymore about that because in the end they're not playing very well. They still have many adjustments to make between all the players. Dembele is a bit disappointing. Colomwani is very much disappointing compared to what he was doing in Frankfurt. So I'm not sure PSG going to win, and even if they win the group, uh, they have so many things to settle and fix before advancing in the next phase of the Champions League.
While we're on the topic of PSG, just real quick, I wanted to ask your opinion on some of these young guys that were coming in. Blanking on his name. I'm trying to pull up that lineup from the game. Yeah, Zaire Emery. He played pretty
Yeah,
well, and he's
yeah.
like 17, 18, I think.
This is what we want to see from PSG. You're not winning the Champions League by just putting the money. Look at City. They had the money, but they created a process. They recruited young players. When they recruited like Leroy Sané, nobody knew about him, and he grew up in City. Or even though he left before the Champions League, that's the kind of process. They have so many young players that came in City when they were still like kind of unknown players in Europe, and they weren't worth that much of money, and they took like 10 years to win the Champions League. Even Pep Guardiola, the man, maybe the best coach to win the Champions League, he didn't even, he was out of solution at a point. So when you see what Manchester City do, the time it took, and the amount of setting and adjustments it took, you can't win the Champions League like PSG is trying to do with just putting Messi, putting Neymar, putting the money on every player every summer, and expect them to win at the first season. Like firing coaches every year. You need to let the time to the coach to adapt to the team, build something. You can't expect a coach to win the Champions League in 1 year with that kind of team and superstar. So I'm quite happy they fired all the player. They tried a new coach, and they also going with young players. They're trying to develop. That's the kind of process they need to go through. Now there is many adjustments, as I said, many things to fix before being able to be, consistent and a dominant team. But on the paper, it looks good. On the pitch, not so good for the moment. But on the paper, it's promising.
Now, we were talking about how Dortmund and Newcastle are tied at 4 apiece. Do you think that the loss of Sandro Tonali with the whole betting situation, the gambling, do you think that will, how big of an impact will that face how big will that impact them in the Champions League at least, do you think?
That's always complicated to know. It's whenever something happened in the locker room like that, it's you never know how much of an impact it can have on the team. Um, but in the case of Newcastle, it just looks like it's just one player. It's not, things like we saw last year with the Juventus, where it was the entire board of direction that was into weird stuff of money. So I don't know. I think it will have less impact if it's like directly the club and the board members who are involved, or if it's like many players, like Brentford is just one player. So I don't know. We'll see. I think it is not gonna have that much of an impact. At a point, it can ruin the entire season, or at least the first half of the season until December. So we'll see.
Yeah. Um, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this group plays out because all four teams are worthy candidates, and with
That's
Newcastle.
That's the thing, no
Mhm.
team really deserves to get out of the group without even going in the Europa League. Even Milan, if they ended up with that not that much amount of points, which mean they played kind of bad, the performances they are doing since last season in Italy means that they're still a good team. So it's just that, you don't want to see a team get out of the group, but you have to, you have to leave one and send one in Europa League because it's so much fun seeing Dortmund and Newcastle playing. I love, especially Newcastle. There's so much energy in the stadium and with the players. So yeah, as you said, every team is worthy to at least go in the Europa League.
So who do you think is going to be the two teams that advance through the Champions League?
This is very personal, but I'd like to see Newcastle because I love the project they have and the energy. So I think they really deserve to go in the next phase. So I'd go with Newcastle, but it's no analytics or it's just that I really want to see them succeed in the next round.
Newcastle, and then did you say PSG as well, or did you say Dortmund?
Um, Yeah, I'll keep if I put Newcastle second, I'll keep PSG first, not Dortmund. It would be amazing, an amazing of a surprise and incredible for the entertainment to see the PSG in Europa League, and also not exciting the next phase of the Champions League. But in that case, if I say Newcastle, yes, that means that Dortmund's go through the Europa League.
I'm actually going to have to agree with you there, every single point there, because I think PSG is just going to win. I think they're pretty loaded with the talent. And then Newcastle, I think they're going to edge out Dortmund. Both teams have an incredible home stadium environment, but
Yeah,
the St. James's Park, being up in England, and it's cold, it can be rainy. There's that saying that they
and
always say, like, a cold, rainy day, and
yeah, and I've watched the game against PSG. It was the atmosphere, on any action, like random action, you just have like, for example, a Newcastle defender who steals the ball from Mbappe and puts it in a corner kick, and is just waving at the fans and the stadium answers. Just so amazing to see.
these fans are so deprived from European competition. So they're just going to bring that energy every single
Yeah,
opportunity because they don't know
yeah.
when the next time they're going to play European games will be. So I would agree with that. Group G, I don't even know if we need to, say much about Group G. It's Manchester City, RB
No
Leipzig,
surprise.
yeah, Young Boys, and uh, I'll let you. I don't know how to say this. Serbian team.
Yeah. Well, it's the Red Star Belgrade. Uh,
Yeah,
they City they have all 9 points. Leipzig second with 6 points. The only 3 point missing is the one against City. Young Boys way behind with 5 points, and then the Red Star Belgrade last with 1.2. No surprise. City first with all the points. Leipzig second was just the win missing against City, and then that's the hierarchy we need to see in that group.
I can't believe that I didn't even realize that that was Red Star Belgrade. It's just, I guess, the translation when on my paper was it was in
Yeah,
the
maybe.
original Serbian.
Oh, okay, you're right, you're right.
But no,
Yeah, in,
I
in that case, it's all right. It's all right in that case. I don't
I
speak
would agree.
Serbian.
I would agree with you that, I mean, it's like you said, Leipzig's only points that they dropped was against Manchester City, and that's to be expected. They lost 7-1, I think, in
Yeah, City
And
was here to just
yeah, it
destroy
was
them.
yeah, that was. I remember I went to go get some lunch or dinner with my dad and my brother, and it was 0-0. And then I was like, let me just check the score real quick, and it was like Erling Haaland has 5 goals. I'm just like, what the hell? Not to he's pretty incredible. So wouldn't
and
put it
and
past him.
Pep took him out only for him to not beat the
Messi,
Messi's record.
I think Pep, despite Haaland still playing, Pep has a sweet spot for Messi in his heart because they asked him
Obviously,
about the Ballon
obviously,
d'Or.
he's a product from Barcelona, so
It was funny though. They asked him about that
yeah.
Ballon d'Or, and he was like, "Messi's worst season is everyone else's best." So, um, I think Messi ultimately will end up winning the Ballon d'Or. That's a
We'll
completely different
see. Maybe have the
conversation.
time to talk about it in the end at the end of the year. So
Yeah, let's
it's soon. It's in a few weeks now. So
but the last group, this one also is pretty straightforward. It seems like Group H, Barcelona 9 points, Shakhtar 6 points, Porto 3 points, Antwerp 0. I think we're probably both in agreement that Barca is going to win the group,
yeah,
but I don't think
it's a bit like City's group. You know, no real surprise. Barcelona being the strongest team, obviously. Porto, being the second good team. They're always good in Europe. Donetsk is always a hard team, a tricky team to play, especially when we go out here. But you know, with the current situation in Ukraine, and it's obvious that it's not the Donetsk we are used to seeing in the previous years in Europe. So, but you know, the hierarchy again, just like City's group, is respected. With Porto and Donetsk being like the second and third best team in the group. Royal Antwerp, you know, small Belgian team, so it's already incredible to see them in the Champions League. So hope for them to get, you know, 1 or 2 points before the end, but no real surprise. And I think for Barcelona, tell me if you agree, but you know, they had some terrible years in the last 2 or 3 seasons. It's the first time they're like getting back in the Champions League with some chances to go a bit far, like not in the final, but maybe to see the quarterfinals. This group is kind of a test for them, especially Porto. You know, with the new team, with the new players and all the young players they have, it feels like a test. So it's like reassuring and good to see them first with all the points.
yeah, I agree. I mean, last year I felt like last year was my first real year paying that closely to all the competitions and just the sport in general. But like you said, it really feels like since unfortunately that Bayern Munich game, it seems like since then, uh, Barcelona hasn't really been able to kick it into gear when it comes to the Champions League. They've kind of been in a little bit of a rebuilding process, shuffling around
Yeah.
managers, trying to move on from Messi and whatnot. So they feel like they're in a really good spot. Unfortunately, they're suffering from seems like a handful of injuries. Like Pedri's injured, De Jong is injured,
Yeah, and
Lewandowski.
if you watch some games they're playing in the Liga, they still have some adjustments. Like you feel like they're not playing at their best level. They still have some potential, and there's some room for improvement. But they already playing better than they were last year. And you feel like you know the chemistry and the coach's tactics are coming into the sport where you know Xavi wants to put them, and Ter Stegen is having great season. Lewandowski is you know I think he's a bit better than he was last year. You know he's fitting more to the team now after a year of rotation, and the young players are finally starting to play at the level they are expecting to play. So you know there are really some good signs of improvement and encouragement since last season. And yeah, I think you know the rebuilding process is in a very good way for Barcelona.
Definitely. And now I just wanted to ask you, like the whole entire tournament, if you had to pick right now who you think is going to win, who would you say?
City,
City?
yeah, they just look so strong. I would be tempted to say Bayern because our offense is just fire, but we're taking too many goals. Like our defense is still weak from last year. In the Bundesliga, we don't have one weekend without taking a goal. And in the Champions League too. I mean, we took a goal at Copenhagen and we won just by 1 goal. Like we were almost near for just coming back with the draw against Manchester. They were not got that good, but we still took 3 goals, and we had to, score a lot in order to get to win that game. In Galatasaray, we also took a goal this week, so we are taking too many goals, and even in the Bundesliga. So that's the reason why I'm not saying Bayern, despite the fire offense and the great midfielder. For example, last year against City, defense is what cost us the game. We made too many mistakes, and we were just too weak against players like Haaland and the perfectly played system of Guardiola. So I'm saying City because that's just the most solid team right now.
Hard to go against them. I mean, they're the reigning champion after all. Now going back to Bayern though, real quick, what's the situation, the goalkeeper situation? Is Neuer is he going to be healthy again this
So
year?
yeah, so this summer we signed a third goalkeeper, Daniel Peretz. He's Israeli. He was playing for Tel Aviv. I didn't knew about him, so it looks all right. He played in the German Cup, so apparently he's just playing in the German Cup so far, and he's still Ulreich playing in the Championship. So yeah, Neuer. Apparently he is like he's all right. He's healthy. He came back to the training with the rest of the team and the goalkeepers for many weeks now. But from what the team said, he still needs a few weeks to be perfectly able to come back. So I think we'll still have to wait a month to see him come back, and maybe we'll be first in the Bundesliga before in the Champions League, before the Champions League.
I think if Neuer can get back to the form he had, before the World Cup and just the Neuer we're used to, I think
Yeah,
Bayern
yeah.
can very well compete with City. I think it's really the usual suspects. It's going to be Manchester City, it's going to be Bayern Munich, it's going to be Real Madrid. Those are going to be like the three heavy favorites, I think, especially with
Yeah.
the way Jude Bellingham has been playing for Madrid. I can't count them out just yet.
He's incredible. He's incredible. Yeah. And Madrid, we talked about that so many times last year in the podcast, but when comes the Champions League, Madrid is a different team. So I always count, on them, even though this year they look just weaker than last year. But we never know, as you said, you can't count Madrid out. But yeah, Bayern, we'll see if Neuer's. I think he'll come back healthy. It's not the first time he's going through a huge injury, and he always came back. Also, he's almost like Robocop at a point, with all the injuries he had. But against, my thing with Bayern is that the defense is still weak. Upamecano and De Ligt, they are playing better than last season. De Ligt is way stronger than he was last season. He's improving at such an amazing speed. We recruited that I'm always forgetting his name.
Kim
It's too
Min Jae.
complicated. Yeah, Kim Min-jae from Napoli. He's been amazing. He's so solid and aggressive, sometimes too much aggressive. So he also brought some solidity to the defense, but also the room for changes because last season we only had basically Upamecano and Dele. So whatever happened, we were forced to keep them because they were like the best defender we had. And even though it was not working, we still had to go with Upamecano and Dele. And now the coach is, for example, last week it was De Ligt and Kim Min-jae, and at the beginning of the season it was Upamecano and Kim Min-jae. So we're switching, we're adjusting, so that's better. But still, I think we still have too many weakness in defense to be able to beat a team like City.
Now, one last question for you. Uh, Liverpool is playing in the Europa League.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any other team that can compete with them if they're, putting out their best lineup?
We have to look at the teams that are in the Champions League. Like
That's
maybe
true. I
maybe
forgot. We gotta wait
may,
until
maybe Dortmund and Newcastle.
there's always
And
Sevilla too.
yeah, and Sevilla. I think these are the three teams that can face and Manchester United too. These are the 3 or 4 teams that can face Liverpool, compete truly against them in the Champions League. But in the current Europa League, I don't know. They're just too good for the Europa League right now, and it's cool to see them playing at that level. Even though they had I mean, you tell because you had a Liverpool fan, but they had quite a mid-season last year. It was not at the best. So yeah, I think they're a good way to go all the way in the Europa League.
Yeah, I think what ultimately will decide it too is like say it's the Europa League comp or quarterfinals and they're playing someone, but then the game of over the weekend is against like Manchester City or Arsenal. Like Klopp is not going to play his best lineup if they have
Yeah.
that big of a league game coming up. So it all depends on the way the schedule falls too.
Yeah, and they had the chance to win the Europa League a few years ago. I remember that game against
Sevilla, right?
Dortmund. Yeah, against Dortmund,
The
the
comeback.
quarterfinal. Yeah, the comeback in Anfield, and they had the chance to win, but Sevilla was too strong. Uh, and then they went on winning the Premier League, winning the Champions League, and now they're back in the Europa League. And it was already Klopp when they lost against Sevilla, so maybe
Hmm.
Klopp will want to have some have a revenge, even though it's not Sevilla in front of them. So why not?
I think that was Klopp's first year too, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully, we can come full circle and get a trophy this year since
Yeah,
it's going to be tough to win the champ or the win the Premier League with the way Spurs have been playing, Manchester City's been playing, Arsenal's been playing. It's going to be a tight race down to the end. Having said all that, Evan, it's been great having you back on the podcast. Hopefully, we can have you again
a
very
pleasure. Yeah.
soon. And thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next week. All right, cool.